You are here because someone didn't die. Not just one person. Think about what it actually took. Your mother, her mother's mother. Keep going. 100 generations, 1,000. Keep going until the person you land on has no name, no language, no shelter beyond what they could find before dark. They are crouched over a fire they nearly failed to start in a world that is actively, persistently trying to kill them. That person is you. Distant, unrecognizable, but you. And here is the thing that should stop you cold. If any one of the thousands of people standing between you and that firelit ancestor had made a single different choice, turned left instead of right, stayed when they should have moved, given up in the dark when everything said to, you would not exist. Not in some abstract philosophical sense. Literally, you would not be here. You are the end result of an unbroken chain of survival stretching back 300,000 years. Every link held, every single one. Today we're going to look at 5 moments when that chain almost snapped. 5 periods in human history so brutal, so total in their destruction, that the odds of anyone surviving them, let alone your specific ancestors, were almost impossibly small. This is Ancestor Tactics, and this is how close you came to never existing at all. Number 5. The long winter that lasted centuries. 20,000 years ago, the world froze. Not a cold snap, not a bad decade. A glacial maximum so severe that ice sheets 2 miles thick buried northern Europe, Asia, and most of North America. The kind of cold that doesn't just kill the weak, it restructures the entire planet. Sea levels dropped 120 meters. Coastlines that are now ocean floor were open land. Landscapes your ancestors had navigated for generations disappeared under ice and didn't come back for thousands of years. The megafauna they depended on, woolly mammoths, cave bears, giant deer, were themselves struggling. Herds that had followed predictable migration routes for centuries began moving unpredictably, or not moving at all. A hunter who had inherited generations of knowledge about where the animals would be in winter suddenly found that knowledge was wrong. Your ancestor stood at the edge of a frozen plain with a spear, wearing the hide of the last animal they managed to kill, looking out at a landscape that had stopped making sense, and they did not go home. Because there was no home, there was only forward. The ones who survived were not necessarily the strongest. They were the most adaptable, the ones who could eat what was available rather than what was preferred. Who could read a landscape that had never been read before? Who could hold a group together through a winter so long it felt permanent? Most didn't make it. The ones who did are the reason you're here. Number 4, the supervolcano that almost ended everything. If the Ice Age was a slow grinding pressure, what happened 74,000 years ago was an instant. The Toba supervolcano in what is now Sumatra erupted with a force so staggering it is difficult to hold in the mind. 670 cubic miles of ash and debris launched into the atmosphere, enough material to bury the entire continental United States under several meters of rock and dust. In a matter of days, the sky across most of the planet turned dark. Then it stayed dark. For an estimated 6 to 10 years, sunlight was blocked or severely reduced across much of the Earth. Temperatures dropped by up to 15 degrees Celsius globally. Plants died. The animals that ate the plants died. The animals that ate those animals died. Food chains that had sustained human life for hundreds of thousands of years collapsed, layer by layer, from the bottom up. Your ancestors were already living close to the edge. Hunter-gatherers in a difficult world, managing scarce resources with extraordinary skill. Toba didn't just make things harder. It removed the margin entirely. The current scientific estimate is that the total human population after Toba shrank to somewhere between 1,000 and 3,000 individuals. Every person alive on Earth today, 8 billion of us, descended from that tiny remnant, a group small enough to fit inside a single large building. Think about what that means. The entire human story. Every civilization, every invention, every war, every act of love or cruelty or genius that has ever occurred, all of it passed through a gap so narrow it almost closed. Your ancestor was on the other side of that gap, somehow, against every probability. Number 3, the invisible enemy. For most of human history, the things most likely to kill you were visible. A predator, a rival, a storm, a famine you could see coming in the thinning of the herds. Then humans began living together in large numbers, and something changed. The first permanent settlements, emerging around 10,000 years ago, were by any measure a triumph. Stored food, shared labor, the beginnings of everything we now call civilization. But they created a condition that had never existed before in human history: density. Hundreds, then thousands of people living in close contact, sharing water sources, sharing waste, sharing air. Disease had always existed, but it had never had this before. A crowd. The pathogens that moved through early agricultural settlements were not the relatively manageable illnesses of the hunter-gatherer world. They were diseases amplified by scale: typhoid, cholera, smallpox in its early forms, illnesses that tore through dense populations with a speed and lethality that must have seemed, to the people experiencing it, like punishment from somewhere beyond understanding. Skeletons excavated from early agricultural settlements tell the story plainly. Shorter stature than their hunter-gatherer predecessors, indicating chronic nutritional stress. Evidence of anemia, dental decay at rates unknown in mobile populations, and the bone signatures of infectious disease, lesions, deformations, evidence of bodies fighting infections they were encountering for the first time, with immune systems that had never been asked to respond to anything like them. Your ancestors survived this, not by understanding what a pathogen was, not with medicine, with an immune system that happened to carry the right response, with luck, with the particular biological inheritance of someone who had survived something similar a generation before. The margin between surviving and not was often invisible, written in blood and cellular chemistry, rather than skill or strength or will. Number 2, the plague that rewrote Europe. In 1347, a ship docked in Sicily carrying sailors who were either dead or dying in ways that no one had seen before. Within months, what they carried had spread across the continent. Within 5 years, it had killed between 30 and 60% of Europe's entire population. The Black Death did not discriminate. It moved through peasant villages and royal courts. It emptied monasteries and marketplaces. It killed so fast and in such numbers that the living could not bury the dead. Bodies were stacked in the streets of major cities. Entire villages were simply abandoned, left standing, silent, the lives inside them suddenly over. What made it so devastating was not just its lethality, but its invisibility. People had no framework for understanding what was happening. They could not see the bacterium. They could not trace its path from rat to flea to human skin. They watched people they loved develop the swollen black lymph nodes that gave the plague its name, and they had nothing. No explanation, no treatment, no way to know whether they themselves were already carrying it. Your ancestor in this period survived something they could not understand, could not predict, and could not fight. They survived it anyway. Through isolation or immunity or the particular fortune of living in a place the disease reached late or never. The Europe that emerged from the Black Death was demographically hollowed out. But it emerged. The chain held. Number 1, the beginning. Everything on this list, the Ice Age, the supervolcano, the plague, the invisible spread of disease through the first cities, all of it came later. Before any of it, there was just the beginning. 300,000 years ago, in the landscape of what is now East Africa, the first anatomically modern humans existed. There were not many of them. Estimates suggest the founding population of Homo sapiens may have been as small as a few thousand individuals, living in a world that already contained other human species: Neanderthals, Denisovans, others we are only beginning to identify from fragments of ancient DNA. These early humans had intelligence. They had language in some form. They had fire and tools and the beginnings of social organization. But they had no medicine, no agriculture, no stored food, no shelter beyond what they could construct and carry. Every day was a negotiation with a world that offered no guarantees, predators that could outrun and outfight them, droughts that came without warning, injuries that in our world are minor inconveniences and in theirs were death sentences, children who died before they could carry anything forward. The odds that any specific lineage would survive intact from that founding population to the present, through everything that came between, are so small as to be functionally incalculable. And yet here you are, not because your ancestors were the strongest, or the fastest, or the most ruthless. The archaeological record doesn't support a story of simple dominance. It supports a story of adaptability, of groups that shared knowledge across generations, that maintained social bonds under pressure that should have broken them, that found food where there appeared to be none, and kept moving when stopping meant dying. You carry all of that. Every adaptation, every survival instinct, every piece of biological and cultural inheritance that made it through those bottlenecks, it's in you. Dormant in most circumstances, present in all of them. You are not lucky. You are the product of an unbroken line of people who refused to be the one who ended it. That chain is 300,000 years old. You are the newest link. Don't be the weakest one. If this landed for you, the real story of where you came from and what it actually cost, subscribe and stay with us. Every episode of Ancestor Tactics goes deeper into what your ancestors knew, how they lived, and what we've quietly forgotten. Next time, we're looking at the single skill that may have done more to keep that chain unbroken than any other, and almost nobody talks about it. Your ancestors didn't survive by accident, neither will you.